Hey buddy, it's Mike here. Today we're talking about WWE 2K24 and if it's really worth your money, especially if you already own 2K23. So let's get right into it. We go over the new additions. So you got a special guest referee. I know this has been asked for a while and they finally delivered. So you know, it's really great that they added this in there. You can even have different referees. You can create your own referee. So I love the customization there. And unfortunately, special guest referees are limited to one-on-one matches. So that's one thing to keep in mind. They added something called an ambulance match. So this is where you pretty much beat up your opponent, where they end up having to take an ambulance home. And it's pretty much a button mash-a-thon. So if that's the only complaint I had about this game mode. I think the whole idea is really cool. The ambulance is pretty huge. It's almost the size of the ring, but besides the point, this is a type of game mode that will make your fingers hurt from how repeatedly you'll have to mash the buttons just to get that ambulance door closed and to finalize that match. And what I really liked is that you can actually climb on top of the ambulance, and so you can imagine all the possibilities that comes with that. Of course, you have a casket match, and then also a gauntlet match. These additional game modes, I would say the ambulance and special guest referee are the best. You know, casket's also very good too. It's very similar idea as the ambulance match. But yeah, and gauntlet match is basically a gauntlet match. You'll you know, beat one opponent and then someone else will come into the ring and so forth. So there's nothing too special about that one. And yeah, that pretty much covers the new game modes. Now we're going to get into other stuff, and I'm going to start off with the new roster. Now, one thing I want to mention about this one is there's some anomalies when it comes to the ratings. There's some very odd ratings, some that I don't particularly agree with, but then again, that's my opinion, right? It's not saying that my opinion's right. Now, first off thing I noticed is we have Logan Paul at a 90, and that's fine, you know, that's great, dude. Logan Paul fans support him, but that's a little bit high for someone who literally just got into WWE. And you got someone, and on the other hand, we have Kane, who's a 79. That means this game's pretty much telling us that Logan Paul is way ahead of Kane, and I just think that's ridiculous. Kane is one of the top wrestlers of all time. He should not be a 79. I know he's a little bit in his old age, but at the very least, like an 8. Like, I know there's two versions of Kane, so there's the more modern version, which is the lower rating one. That's 79, but at the same time, I just think he's closer to a 90. And another thing that's ridiculous, so I don't know if anyone else an old school wrestling fan here, but come on, X-Pac, you're giving him a 78. This guy's a legend, and he should at least be an 85. I don't know what they're doing with the ratings in this one, but X-Pac is definitely not a 78. They need to fix that. So that means, you know, the likes of Logan Paul is way better than some legends we have like X-Pac and Kane. So I found that kind of odd. There's some of the ratings, I know they're trying to be very tough on some of these wrestlers. Like, for example, another example here is Dude Love and Cactus Jack, and they're like in the low 80s. These are, and you would at least expect them in the high 80s. That being said, they do have Mankind. He's like an 86. But, you know, there's just some iffy things going on in terms of the ratings. And it's not a huge deal. Like, you can always go in and edit them as needed. I just thought that was kind of weird. And, like, why is Hulk Hogan only, like, he should be, like, a 97 or something. As far as I'm concerned, he's one of the top wrestlers of all time. So, according to 2K, Bad Bunny is as strong as Kane right now, and I just think that's ridiculous. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing with the ratings, but yeah. Yeah, those are just my quick thoughts on the ratings. You'll find some interesting ratings, and that's a different route that 2K decided to go. Another thing that kind of sucked is that you're missing some key wrestlers. Like, I know there's contracts, and I know some of these wrestlers are with different leagues right now. Like, for example, Ric Flair. It's so weird not having Ric Flair in this game. You know, it's the Nature Boy. He should be in every wrestling game. But of course, he signed with AEW, so I mean, it makes sense that he's not in the game. It just kind of sucks. And then the whole Brock Lesnar situation going on. It's really unfair. He's one of my favorite wrestlers, and he's not in this one. And then, of course, you're missing Vince McMahon. So there's tons of different key wrestlers that I found that you're missing, and I don't think they're even be including in the DLC. So that's another unfortunate thing going on here. I will say the DLC is a lot better this time around. For example, there's an update coming in November, and they're gonna add Diamond Dallas Page, and I think that's awesome. It's about time we had DDP in a wrestling game again. It's been some time. There's also some other great DLC characters, and it's not overloaded with NXT like at WWE 2K24 was. So I think in terms of DLC quality, you're gonna get a lot more value out of this one. We're gonna look at the gameplay. So in terms of gameplay, they have really improved the overall animations. There's a lot less jankiness. The animations are a lot smoother, and it's a lot less glitchier like you would find in earlier 2K games. I just really like the feeling of this particular 2K, WWE 2K. It just, the way the physics felt, they just did it right this time, and I feel like 2K is just getting better at making these games. So they came a long way since from the the jankier physics in the previous games, and they also added something called super finishers. So not all wrestlers will get one of these, but specific wrestlers will charge these finishers up, and that gives them an alternative to their regular finisher. And then they added this striking mini game where you pretty much press different buttons, and haven't had it happen too much, but you just exchange blows, and whoever messes up hitting the button pretty much loses the striking mini game. So not too much to add on that one, but just a new addition nonetheless. So this year for My Rise, you have two storylines. You got Undisputed, so that's like the men's career mode, and in this case Roman Reigns is taking a step back. I think he's going to Hollywood, and he kind of leaves everyone else to kind of run for the title, and it's your job to kind of work your way to the title and defend it. And also you have Unleashed, so that's the women's version. So this is more so about sporting a brand, and you and your manager kind of work to make the brand the top brand in WWE. Now the difference between the two, very briefly, Undisputed is more linear, so you kind of have to work your way up through certain matches, but the Unleashed part has more branching paths and more freedom in that sense. But that being said, I know Unleashed is really focused on using certain move sets each match, so it's not only about winning, but it's winning by using a certain move or something along the sorts. So I think they're fun. I haven't fully complete both, to be honest, but I will say it is an improvement from last year. I do enjoy these two game modes, and it's a lot of fun. Now, one thing that keeps people coming back to these WWE games is the showcase mode, and this is my personal favorite mode, and I really liked how this year they focused on WrestleMania. So you get to play some of the biggest matches ever, like Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan versus Randy Savage, Ultimate Warrior versus Hulk Hogan, Bret Hart versus Steve Austin, some of the biggest matches of all time. That being said, it's not as extensive of a WrestleMania experience that you would get, like, say, I don't know if anyone here played WWE 2K14, but in that particular year, I think there was, close to 40 matches. So they definitely cut down in terms of how many, matches you get to play, and which makes sense. It's kind of, because I know certain wrestlers are banned or no longer with the WWE brand, but at the same time, I really liked this showcase. All I could ask for is if they added more matches, playing some of these iconic matches. Some of these I actually managed to be there in person, like Steve Austin versus The Rock, and Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, some of the best matches ever. So I really liked how they focused on that, and it offers 21 matches, but you're going to get a lot of value, and you get to unlock the different characters and whatnot. There's all sorts of prizes you get for winning. So I like that sense of progression. Overall, I think Showcase mode is the best it's been in a very long time. I wouldn't say it's the best ever, because like I said, you had WWE 2K14, they just offered so much more in terms of match variety, but I really like where they're going in terms of Showcase mode this year. Now, if one thing is a really huge missed opportunity this year is Universe mode. So they should have just connected My GM mode and Universe mode and called it a day, but instead these two modes are kind of separate, and they didn't really add too much to Universe mode. I know they introduced double title matches, they added some new cut scenes, they added some new rivalry actions, but it's really not that much. It's pretty much the same as it's always been. And for a sandbox mode, I feel like there's a lot more they could have done. And like I said, if they add some elements from the GM mode, you could have one heck of a game mode that people are gonna love. And you know, people can even stream it, right, if they had something like that. But yeah, it's just kind of underwhelmed by the Universe mode. Like I said, it's a mode that I really want to see improvement from in the coming years, so hopefully they do that, but really not too much added to Universe mode, sadly. And I like where they're going with the GM mode. Again, kind of like the Universe mode, they could have added more, but they didn't for whatever reason. But they added some things, like you can trade superstars, you know, there are more options in terms of managing contracts, and they also included talent scouts. So they're adding more depth to the overall experience. Tons of stuff you can do in My GM the way it is. So like I said, they didn't need a complete overhaul. You can select your brand, draft your roster, set up show logistics, you know, book shows and establish rivalries, you know, and hire superstars. So it's all sorts of options. So I can see people spending hours just lost in this My GM mode. A lot of fun. And one game mode I won't get into much about is the My Faction mode. So basically, this is your transactional card game that's built into the game. I don't know. I'm some people are gonna like it. It's just not for me. I don't feel like spending unnecessary money on digital cards that it just doesn't. I don't see the value in it. And I know they expanded on My Faction a bit, but I'm not gonna spend too much time with it just because it's just not for me, right? There's people who love to spend hundreds of dollars on these digital card packs. It's just not something I plan on doing, so I'm not going to get into that too much. But it's there for those who want your deck building mini game for wrestling. Now, to answer the big question, is WWE 2K24 really worth buying? And is it worth upgrading if you already had WWE 2K23? The answer is no. I would not recommend purchasing this if you already have 2K23. There's just not much significant improvements where I can easily recommend it. However, if you're coming from an earlier year, perhaps like, you know, even bought a game in like 5 years, I would definitely recommend picking it up. I think there's a lot of great things about this. Like I said, the fighting feels a lot smoother. I like the new game modes, you know, that special guest referee is awesome. And just the customization of My GM mode, all of that, you're going to get a lot of value out of this. Unfortunately, we didn't get the changes I'd like to see in Universe mode, but that being said, it's a great package overall. I'd recommend the deluxe version because, you know, there's a lot of great wrestlers that are coming through on the DLC. I wouldn't really recommend the premium version. That's just way too expensive. That's like after taxes in Canadian, that's like close to 180. So I would not recommend that. But definitely some great improvements, and I'm really happy to say that. I'm a lot happier with WWE 2K24 than I was with WWE 2K23. However, I would appreciate more significant improvements. Maybe next year will be the big year where we get those changes, but otherwise I think they're in the right direction, and I'm going to recommend this for someone who doesn't have WWE 2K23. And that's my review for WWE 2K24. If you like my videos, feel free to check out my channel. I'm always reviewing the latest games, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.